Let me start with the news of the day and the reason why it's buyer beware in Brooklyn. Boogie Cousins went down today with a torn ACL. DeMarcus Cousins, former All-Star, who last year this time, everybody except this guy right here, everyone except this guy said, just hand the Warriors the trophy. And I said, look, even if Boogie's healthy, they've never played with a center late in games. He's a defensive liability. He's never played in playoff games. And oh yeah, by the way, he's coming back from a debilitating injury, which people just assume he'll be fine. He wasn't fine. He was a bad defensive player. He did kind of screw him up. He helped him in one game in the NBA Finals. But overall, I would say he's as much minus as he was plus during his 1 year with the Warriors, mostly because of injury. So today he goes down with a torn ACL, which I'm not happy for DeMarcus Cousins. I think he's a guy who's really matured during his time in the NBA. Okay? I'm not pleased as punch for DeMarcus Cousins. But, and this is a big but DeMarcus Cousins is buyer beware. And it also happened in a private workout. How many times have you heard these guys go, man, I don't want to do this Team USA stuff, too much of a workload? Guys that have gotten hurt in Team USA, one, Paul George breaking his leg, was that 5 or 6 years ago? Actually, probably more than that. Right? That's one. He landed awkwardly and broke his leg because the stanchion was too close to the court. And now you have a player getting hurt in a torn ACL just doing a private workout. Doesn't mean he wouldn't have torn his ACL anyway. He might have. Also doesn't mean that that he wouldn't have not gotten hurt because he would be with a team and his weight would have been down. There'd be less injuries. But here's why it's buyer beware. DeMarcus Cousins has now suffered in sequential order a torn Achilles tendon, a ruptured quad muscle, and now a torn ACL. Remember the song when we were kids? The hip bone's connected to the knee bone's connected to the hip bone's connected to the thigh bone's connected to the knee bone's connected to the shin bone, right? You remember that? It is all tied together. Ask any kinesiologist, Gesundheit. Ask any kinesiologist and they'll say, oh yeah, tore your ACL? Sure. I mean, look, you probably had an imbalance. That's why you tore your Achilles tendon. Then they fixed the Achilles tendon, and that's so well put together that it puts pressure on other parts of your body. That's why the quad went, and that's why the ACL went. Kevin Durant was the best player in the NBA last year. For my money, he's been the best player in the NBA the last 3 seasons. Tore his Achilles tendon. Sitting out, hoping to be back. And I believe he could be the outlier because, unlike Boogie Cousins, he's never carried too much weight. Like, he's the kind of guy that could go pig out at the Chinese buffet and not gain a pound. Right? He is waif thin, but he's broken his foot. He's torn his Achilles tendon. What next to go? He's had multiple calf injuries as well. What's next to go? The knee bone's connected to the shin bone connected to the... You got the story. Guys don't just get hurt. They have a sudden injury history when they tear their Achilles tendon because they do such a good job of putting that thing back together. It's so stiff, so firm, so frankly unbreakable that everything else kind of breaks down around it. The buyer beware is, man, you got Kevin Durant. He's on the wrong side of 30. He's coming off a huge Achilles tendon tear. We don't know if he'll be back to that same form. And even if he gets back to that same form, will he be able to stay healthy when so many others aren't healthy after tearing their Achilles tendon because everything else breaks down? So while we can feel bummed for Boogie and wondering what the Lakers do now that they've lost the guy presumed to be their starting center, I think bigger picture is when guys tear these Achilles tendon, like the best player in the NBA, just how long is the road back? And once you make it back after that long road, are you ever truly healthy again? Boogie Cousins' story will tell you not so much. We got some Colin Kaepernick stuff for you with Jay-Z. Now suddenly Jay-Z is supposedly a sellout because Colin Kaepernick has been kind of pushed aside, and Jay-Z, who once stood by Kaepernick, says he stands by Kaepernick, but wishes that guys would protest in a different way. Look, this is the problem. This is the problem. The most disorganized revolution in the history of revolutions. It's a movement without truly a leader, and the guy who could be the leader is kind of nonverbal and hasn't really shown any sort of desire or ability to show the world he still wants to play football. You can tell me that Colin Kaepernick working out, flexing his muscles, showing his tats, and saying he still wants to play is playing. But dude, if you want to play in the NFL, you should be posting video every day of you breaking down film and throwing footballs. You should be willing to go to any camp, anywhere, in any league. Just because, hey, I love football. That's the way it actually will work. And while we're criticizing Jay-Z, the genius of the NFL, hey, go and get a guy who's beyond repute in regards to keeping it real. A guy who didn't previously want to be in business with the NFL. Because at the end of the day, Republicans, Democrats, Independents, we're all capitalists. And Jay-Z trying to spread his message through with financial gain as well makes a whole heck of a lot more sense than Colin Kaepernick, the leaderless leader of a movement, which, I'll be honest, it became a movement. Like, it became a thing. And we never heard from him again. So we got some Kaepernick to get to. Also, an interesting discussion. Was it Phil Simms and who was the coach? Not Bill Cowher, discussing whether or not great offenses are because of the quarterback or because of the offensive coordinator. So we got a lot still to come. But we'll get more NBA with Ric Bucher from Bleacher Report. Remember, news of the day, Boogie Cousins, former All-Star center, was with the Warriors last year. Previous to that, Pelicans. Previous to that, Sacramento Kings. Assumed to be out for the year, tears his ACL in a private workout in Las Vegas. And to me, this is a buyer be very, very aware that Kevin Durant is coming back off a torn Achilles tendon, and he's already had foot surgery, a broken foot that didn't heal right and had to be redone. He's had multiple calf injuries. He's on the wrong side of 30. This is what post-surgery life looks like. Let's bring in Ric Bucher from Bleacher Report, longtime NBA insider. Of course, you see him on Fox Sports 1. You all right, dude? There's kind of some heavy breathing there. Am I crazy to make the correlation between KD, who's the wrong side of 30, and what the rest of his career might look like?
In comparison to DeMarcus, look, there's reason to have concern anytime you have an Achilles injury. That said, there's a vast difference in their natural athleticism and the weight at which they play. And so I don't believe there should be the same level of concern, or that this is the beginning of the end. Again, two non-contact injuries for DeMarcus of a major type. And just the size and the lack of natural mobility, I believe, is ultimately what cost us. And the other part is, to be honest, I think DeMarcus did really, from everything I've heard, he put everything he could into the rehab, but he's never been a good body guy.
Right.
He's been a bad body guy for a long time. And sometimes there's just an inherent weakness when your body is not used to working that hard and you easily put on weight as he would. That means you've got to work twice as hard to keep that weight off. And when your body's already compromised,
Yep.
that ends up just being a recipe for disaster. And those are things that KD does not have to worry about.
Ric Bucher joining us on the Doug Gottlieb Show. I also pointed out earlier in the show, I get that guys don't want to be worn down by playing for Team USA, but how many times we heard people go like, I just don't want to get hurt. And here's DeMarcus. They all are going to work out anyway. You can get hurt in a non-contact thing by yourself. I almost think you're better off being surrounded by the team with the best trainers than you. Go ahead.
Yeah, here's the distinction. And there is a pro and a con to it. But the con is that for 2 weeks, once competition begins, and honestly, if you're trying to make the team, you can't nurse an injury. You can't take a day off the way you could if you're training on your own. If you tweak something and you're training on your own, you know what, I'm going to go light today or whatever. Once competition begins and you're in that 2-week mix, you can't really shut it down. Or if you do, then you're putting the team at a major disadvantage. So I think that's where the distinction is with guys working out on their own. Does the possibility exist of guys getting hurt no matter where you are, where you're training, what you're doing? 100%. But there's a different factor in terms of if something's not feeling quite right, you can take a day off or you can go light. And when you're in the midst of international competition, that's not an option.
Yeah, it's very, very hard to do. Ric Bucher joining us from Fox Sports 1 and Bleacher Report. What do the Lakers do now?
Well, there are a couple guys out there, ultimately, that Ken Farid's still on the market. Nene's still on the market. Farid, in particular, never thought of him as a shooter, but all the time that he was on the bench with the Nets, apparently he did nothing but shoot threes, and he's actually developed a little bit of range. Joakim Noah can't shoot from range, but has the passing skill. Look, they can get somebody who might eat a couple minutes, but I've long thought that their best avenue is to convince Anthony Davis to play the center. 5 and play LeBron at the 4, and that to me is their ideal lineup. So this actually may benefit Frank Vogel in that with JaVale McGee really the only other center on the roster currently, it gives him more impetus or ammo to convince AD that he should play the 5 position. I will say too, DeMarcus did a decent amount of rehabbing his image, but if I'm Frank Vogel, this is one less mouth to feed,
right.
High personality to deal with. It's a benefit for him because from what I've heard from the Warriors, they did a tremendous job of covering just how much of a headache at times that DeMarcus was this past year. Both KD and DeMarcus, the core of the Warriors really held this thing together in a way that the fact that more didn't come out in terms of their internal issues is really a testament to the professionalism of Draymond, Steph, and Clay.
How bad is this Team USA team?
Whew! They're not very good. They don't have leadership. They don't really have a go-to guy. Guys who play the game without the ball, they're limited in that. It's one of the reasons why Derek White has risen in the ranks the way that he has, because he just can make simple plays. He sees the floor, and they really don't have, Donovan Mitchell is probably their best go-to guy, and he's been extremely streaky. Kemba Walker I love his persona and his personality and his presence, but he has not been good on the floor. And the bigs are all mixes and matches. You got a Brook Lopez who's going to be great stretching the floor, but not really a roller to the rim. You got Miles Turner who hasn't been able to shoot from range and should be a roller to the rim. I don't know the level that. The saving grace may be, I don't think that the international competition is going to be as fierce as it's been in the past. Right. But there are a lot of worrisome signs with this national team. And my premise is that they should be I'm okay with this. I think that this development, I think the growth of young players through our national program, I think that's the way it should be. I think we need to stop star chasing when it comes to putting guys on Team USA.
Well, what about the idea of like the Olympics being a 22 and under team or a 24 and under type team?
I love that.
Yeah,
I love that.
I do too.
So look, the reason the rest of the world caught up with us is because we were sending our absolute best, and they were developing their younger guys and playing against us and honing them. And as a result, they closed the gap. Now, there's certain, obviously there's certain programs, they have a lot of veterans involved too, but it was mostly over the last 2 decades, it's been their young players evolving. And I'm to the point now where the game is so global and the value of it has really dissipated for the top pros in the NBA. I'm good with it becoming a development aspect for our game so the NBA game is better, because it's going to be a rude awakening. It's going to be eye-opening for these players playing in the international game and seeing what they don't have and what their athleticism does not allow them to compensate for. And if it ultimately makes the NBA game better and it makes our young players evolve into more complete players, I am all for that. And if it means we don't win gold every year, I'm still okay with that, because I think the state of basketball in the United States will be better served for it.
I agree. Last thing, Ty Lue apparently near a deal to be the Clippers assistant. Of course, he was assistant under Doc going back to the Boston days.
Yeah.
But I can't think that Ty Lue thinks this went well for him, right? Like, I know he wouldn't have gotten the contract he wanted, but he would have been the head coach of the Lakers, and they eventually would have had Anthony Davis and LeBron James, and he'd be potential to get whatever contract he wanted going forward. I think he misplayed this one, and becoming an assistant coach with the Clippers may win in social media, but in the real media, it looks like a misstep.
Yeah, the one question I just have is where his health is and how much he really wanted to jump back into the fire with all that goes with coaching LeBron James.
Yep.
And not having I think essentially what he was looking for is, I want to know that I have the complete backing of the franchise behind me if I'm going to take on that task. And the way the contract conversation went, I think it led him to believe it's not that solid behind me. So what am I really getting into? So
right.
I think from appearance's sake, and I think from as far as, if aspirations, career aspirations, I think you're right. But I'm just, the question that I have in my mind is, how bad did he really want it? And, maybe taking this as a filler is not as much of a downer to Ty as it might appear to us.
Awesome stuff. Ric Bucher, Bleacher Report, FS1. Buke, thanks so much.
Hi, I'm Doug Gottlieb from Fox Sports Radio, and you need to subscribe to the Fox Sports Radio YouTube channel where you can hear and see me. Why not? Plus everybody else who's awesome here in Fox Sports Radio.